Good afternoon, members of the media. Thank you for joining us this afternoon at the Alliance for Change press conference. This afternoon, we have presentations by myself, Kathy Hughes, Chair of the Alliance for Change, and also by Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, leader of the Alliance for Change. I will start with mine, which is on the one-off cash grant for pensioners. Yesterday, the pensioners of Guyana were greeted with an announcement from President Irfan Ali that a one-off cash grant of $28,000 would be paid to every Guyanese pensioner. The AFC is happy when government allocates from our national coffers funds to assist the most vulnerable in our society, and has long been calling for substantial increases in salaries for pensioners, teachers, and other public servants. Although many, including pensioners, might receive this announcement with jubilation, the Alliance for Change continues to reject the subjective, underhand distribution of one-off cash grants that continues to take place without a fair guarantee of equal distribution to all deserving, and with the requisite checks and balances in place to avoid the corruption we have seen in so many of these programs. It is important to recall that at a time when money was scarce in Guyana, the then government had challenges balancing the budget. 4 increases in pensions were granted under the APNU plus AFC government, moving pensions from $13,500 in 2015 to $20,500 in 2019, a 55% increase in 4 years. In fact, in the first 18 months, the APNU AFC government increased pensions 18%. The AFC therefore finds it totally unacceptable that with the windfall Guyana has received from our oil revenues and talk from the government that we are the next Dubai of the world, that pensioners would receive only $18,000, a little over $100 to live on for an entire month. The fact that in fashioning this small donation, this small cash grant, the government did not see it fit to raise the pension base to ensure that any increase granted would not be a one-off, but would be received every month is deplorable and testimony to how little they in fact care. With all sectors complaining of massive price increases and citizens are facing today, how do we expect the most vulnerable in our society, our pensioners, to survive? We ask this PPP government, as an oil-producing nation with so much so-called successes taking place in industry, billion-dollar infrastructure projects, and increasing investments, is this the best that we can do? It is once again clear to all that the PPP cash grant program is handing out crumbs to citizens when today's economy can distribute so much more. So much for we care. Now over to Kemraj Ramjatan, Member of Parliament, for his statement.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you very much, members of the media. This one statement that I am about to read is PPP's vision of division continues. The continuing non-disbursement of funding by government to IDPARA-G, notwithstanding the organization's complete transparency and accountability of its subvention and its stellar operational integrity, is an example of a vision of division by the PPP and its numero uno, Bharat Jagdeo, and its wannabe numero uno, Mr. Charles Ramson Jr. The AFC views this kind of politics as wholly anti-national, and its consequences will create only deeper fissures within our ethnic communities, which manage by and large to coexist. The AFC fears that the consequences may be even more horrific if, as is being sensed in the ground, an interpretation is given that this is a form of terrorism unleashed by those who claim to love Guyana more than all others, but whose ethnic politics has only the aim of monopolizing power. When the decision was made for IDPADA G to be given monies in 2017 for a decade-long recognition of African people, there was no serious public objection or any public objection from the then PPP opposition. The AFC is aware that the then PPP opposition did not mind, since the coalition government was continuing to pour and extend billions of dollars into a sugar sector via transfers to a dying Gaisuko, which is preponderantly of one ethnic community. At that time, some $19 billion was transferred. This discriminatory action of denial of funding to IDPADA G will not build national cohesion nor make a one Guyana. The AFC thus calls on the people of Guyana, especially right-thinking East Indians, to show outrage at this development and to resist it dutifully and unrelentingly. Thank you very much.
And now to our closing statement on recent World Teachers' Day. The Alliance for Change takes the opportunity to greet all those in the noble profession of teaching on World Teachers' Day 2020. This year's theme, Teachers at the Heart of Education Recovery, addresses the very essence of the major challenge facing our nation. It is especially relevant as schools have recently reopened to full face-to-face learning after being affected for about 2 years by the global COVID-19 pandemic. The recent images of students in tents, others without desks and packed together uncomfortable on benches, show clearly the sad and atrocious conditions under which teachers are forced to work. This is compounded by poor salaries, victimization, and the deplorable living conditions and living quarters for those working away from home and an arrogant political directorate. The COVID-19 pandemic took its toll on the delivery and access to education, and many students were unable to access online learning, and many more families found it challenging to provide computers, access to the internet service, and have children supervised during hours of online classes. But regardless of these challenges, our noble teachers, both in the public and private institutions, worked diligently to provide and to produce remarkable results. The Alliance for Change thanks you for your efforts and extends heartiest congratulations. The challenge of the COVID pandemic also brought opportunities and showed us that our educational system is capable of doing so much more. We saw the utilization of online learning and the development of materials to facilitate this mode of education delivery. These are lessons not to be discarded, but to be built on. The Alliance for Change is pleased to see that the present government is continuing the program initiated by the coalition to provide breakfast and books in schools, and more recently, a bus to aid with transportation. The AFC hopes that there will be more of this. It is pertinent to note at this point that the coalition provided government internet free of charge and access to over 200 primary and secondary schools, and the creation of over 250 ICT hubs, all with free internet access across Guyana. The AFC hopes that this government will continue to build on the infrastructure left. The AFC also takes this opportunity to reiterate its call for the return of free university education, and on this World Teachers' Day, for an increase in wages for teachers at a minimum of $100,000 per month. Thank you. Now we're open to your questions. You are free to raise your hand and identify yourself, and we will take your questions. Thank you. I see the first question coming from Svetlana. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Swatlana from News Source. Ms. Hughes, you said the AFC rejects the subjective one-off cash grants. What format you or the party believes should the distribution of these cash transfer take?
Well, as I explained, we think that the most foolproof way of increasing funds to pensioners is by actually increasing the pension rate. That way, it is automatically goes into a system that is monitored not only on a parliamentary level, but is audited in several different areas. So increase the pensions rate at the baseline, not in a one-off for us to hear at a later date, this body didn't get, this body got, and all the different challenges that have been faced with the previous cash grant disbursements. So we want to see it at the base of pensions, increase the pension rate.
My apologies. I'm referencing to all. I noticed government would have issued several cash grants, one-off grants, since taking office. I'm asking, is there a particular mechanism the party believes it should employ in the distribution of these cash transfer? I'm not speaking to the pension, the one the pensions will get soon, generally speaking.
Well, we have mechanisms by which everybody's paid every month, whether it's teachers, whether it's, however it's done. And what we're saying is use the government apparatus to distribute funds, other than having PPP operatives go into communities or individuals go into communities who determine who gets and who doesn't get, with a criteria that is not absolutely fair. And we take that position because of, you will recall, the amount of persons that got pink slips that are still holding pink slips today.
I want to add to Kathy's answer by stating also the additional requirement we demanded, and from the very beginning, that if there be cash transfers that are necessary, that the names and addresses of those that are beneficiaries of such cash grants be put up on the website of the relevant ministry that is doing the transfers. So if it is the Ministry of Agriculture via Fisher Folk that will be getting $150,000, or let's say the same Ministry of Agriculture of those who got the second severance payment package from that ministry, then put the names of all these people on those websites. That is transparency and accountability. It is not being done. And also what we would like to strengthen is the rationale for some of these cash transfers. Having some analysis done as to why you're giving, first of all, Fisher Folk, why you're giving a second severance payment, why you're giving and so on, and why that amount, whether it's 150, 250 and whatever. So there needs to be strengthening of these criteria. But the biggest point is let it be known to the public so that we can scrutinize who and who are getting. Because right now, without the information on the website as we've been asking for, we believe that there is massive discrimination on grounds of ethnic grounds. And that is, it's like buying the votes, because the PPP has tremendous problems in its support bases. And what it is trying to do is to hand out monies. And we can know that from the fact that we get it on the website to find out these people, their names and addresses and so on.
Thank you, Kemraj. I see Javon Vickery has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
We're hearing you now, Javon.
Yes, good afternoon, Javon Vickery, MTV News Updates. I have a question. You said that the figure is, well, unacceptable, what the one-off. Can you tell me what figure were you looking at? What do you think is acceptable? And secondly, with Mr. Kemraj, and you talking about, in ways in which everybody can have, well, every person can eligible to have pension can have it without all the red tapes and so forth. There are factors involved in it. Some of it deals with the security and who gets it. Would you be open to the idea that it should pass through, or there should be some consultation with NIS to eliminate all those other stuff? Would you be open to that suggestion?
Well, to answer the last part of the question is directed to me. Yes, why not? The NIS could be an institutional forum via which this could be passed through. But we still need the names of those people, or at least must be made accessible to us, the information that is, as to who and who are benefiting. Because there can be a lot of scampishness going on and a lot of skullduggery going on, and notwithstanding where the information will be. But since it is public monies, it ought to be made, since it is a grant of a cash transfer, that we know everybody in the country, just like we know how everybody who will be on a voters list. So it is important that we have that aspect of it, whereby we can even check on the NIS institutional arrangements.
And for the first part of your question, there has been quite a bit of research and discussion on what a basic food basket, plus, of course, your basic costs in terms of electricity, a mortgage or rent, or all the other costs that every person has to pay out. And based on that, I would like to answer by saying that whatever that figure is that we agree on nationally, there should be no distinction in this sense that pensioners should be expected to operate with less. So the discussion has been that 100,000 is a minimum given today's world, the price increases we have faced in Guyana over the last year. And therefore, I would like to see that anywhere in the vicinity of 100,000 is what our pensioners should be getting at this point in time. We don't need to go into the benefits of their contributions to Guyana. We have a phenomenon now where many of their relatives are overseas and many of them are here on their own. So anything starting from the vicinity of 75,000 right up to 100,000, we feel would be fair. Svetlana, I see your hand up. Is that another question, or you just didn't put it down?
Yes, I have two other questions. A question to Mr. Ramchadan on his statement and an outside question. Mr. Ramchadan, you spoke about EPATG and the funds not being given to that organization. Could you see if the party would have reached out to EPATG to have an understanding of its impact, the impact of not receiving the necessary finance, the impact it would have had on the organization, and whether the party is looking to raise this matter at this level of the National Assembly, given its significance? And an outside question, the Ghana Elections Commission has been looking at plans for local government elections as presented by the Chief Elections Officer. Now, they have been looking at the plan for about 2 months now, and the Chief Election Officer has been sent, I think, for a 7th time to revise his plan. Is the party concerned that there seems to be delays in finalizing the plan, which would allow for local government elections to be held? Is it a concern for the party?
Kemraj, maybe
yes.
you answer the last question and then I can mention my contact with Ipadaji.
Yeah, well, you go ahead, Kathy.
Okay.
With it, Pat.
Svetlana, yes, the party has reached out to Ipadaji. We have been in receipt of quite a bit of documentation that we are reviewing. And, you know, we have been quite horrified that some of the funding given to organizations like the night school in Sophia were actually cut. We were not aware of that. And Ipadaji has quite a few initiatives such as that one, whereby they have taken up the funding. It is absolutely clear from the time that this process of public humiliation and since that process took place and was conducted by the vice president, it was absolutely clear the very vicious approach that he was taking to attack one organization. It's been in the public domain that there are several organizations that receive large subventions, and we have not seen the same kinds of requirements being requested of those organizations. And this is where the government seems not to understand that a level playing field must be established and principles by which all organizations subscribe to. It therefore looks very funny when you pick on one organization and you do not respond to some of the other organizations that persons have been questioning and saying, why have you not put the similar requirements on these individuals? What is also sad is to have the vice president request information, the information be handed to him, and then, of course, a minister requests the same information. Clearly, the right hand and the left hand seem not to know what they are doing. And we continue to look at the situation. Kemraj, over to you.
Yeah, let me just also add that, yes, indeed, after more speaking to them, we certainly will not leave out the option of carrying the matter to Parliament with a motion of some sort or major questions to the ministers. In relation to the last question about revising the dates for local government elections, I want to say, well, that is what you're going to get as the consequence if you did not want to do a revisit or a review of the last elections to understand the complexities that GCOM will have to confront when holding an elections. And that is why the CEO, Mr. Vishnu Prasad, now will have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new date, and then go back again after certain questions would have been asked by him or by the commissioners, especially the opposition commissioners and so on. And then the whole thing about having a voters list that will be so bloated to the extent whereby in that local government elections, you have to now go and print a couple 100,000 more voters' ballot papers. It is an extraordinary thing. So it is important that they do their review. And we are very concerned that up to now, they really can't get a date, or at least the roundabout date, around March, we understand now. But for all you know, next week, they could very well come back and say, well, it can't be March, it will be April the 1st. And we will know what, you know, or April the 30th, or whatever the day. So we are very, very concerned. That is not the way in which an institution that is as important and significant for this country as GCOM to not be in a position to state when local government elections should be held. And to your question then, we are very, very concerned.
I think I see Lekram's hand up. So Lekram, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you
Good
hear me?
afternoon. Yes, hearing you loud and clear.
Lekram Bagger from the Standard News. On the issue of local government elections, The proposed date at this time is March 8th or 6th, somewhere thereabout.
All
There
right,
have
and it
been,
just goes to show.
there have been some questions as to whether the AFC has decided to go at this election alone or go as a coalition. I know the review of the relationship with the coalition is scheduled for the end of this year. At this point, do you have any idea of whether you're going at these elections alone or you're going to renew your partnership with the APNU and go at these elections and other elections as a coalition?
I can start off by
Yes,
saying that
Kathy, go
we
ahead.
are unable to answer that question at this point in time. And just to reiterate that our position with regard to local government election is that no citizen, no country should be asked to go to a local government election with a list that has solicited so much controversy. At the end of the day, the IRI poll, I would like to remind us, showed us that more than 80% of the voting population has no confidence in the process. That is a very serious indictment. And therefore, having an election for the sake of having an election without dealing with citizens' concerns about the process would be foolhardy and a recipe for disaster.
Well, thanks, Kathy. And I think Kathy put it well in a nutshell there. I don't have anything else to add.
Davina, I think your hand is up. You're next.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
we can
loud
hear
and
you.
clear.
Okay. My question is of the statement. Firstly, at the recently concluded Guyana Basin Summit, one of the key points raised was the need for indigenous communities to also benefit from the burgeoning sector. Do you believe that presently Amerindian communities are benefiting from any revenue rating from oil profits?
I do not believe that the Amerindians are in any way benefiting specifically from that. And that is one of the reasons why we feel that there ought to be a properly worked out strategy. The PPP talks about their low carbon development strategy and all of that, or the revised low carbon development strategy. But I don't see anything there which indicates clearly what will be the benefit. What we are seeing, Davina, is but the support base largely in the agricultural areas and the coastal zone and so on, where the PPP is literally buying the votes. And that is where we are getting a little angry as to how this thing is working. That oil revenue stream that was signed on to by the coalition government is supposed to be across the board in relations to its beneficiaries, not only a certain set of people. And that is why we will maintain that they do not want to put the names of the people who have so far been beneficiaries of the cash transfers. And it is a shameless kind of politics that the PPP is indulging in. I am still to see very specifically what have been the beneficial distribution to the indigenous peoples. But they must also partake, because this is big monies we are talking about. Right now, I'm doing a study, and it would appear that we are this year going to get $1.2 billion from the fortuitous circumstances that has created rise in prices for the oil, the crude oil. And so we will be benefiting a minimum of $1.2 billion. And so it is important then that this year's money find itself in everybody's pockets, whether directly or indirectly. And I don't see, to your question, really, how the Amerindians or the indigenous peoples are benefiting.
I have another question, sir. And this one is also
Davina,
specifically for,
sorry,
Sorry.
Davina, before you go on, I want to just add to Kamraj's response. At the end of the day, we recognize that the physical location of so many of the hinterland communities would serve as a disadvantage just because they're not actually located in in Georgetown, to be able to quite often hear, to see when some of the RFIs come out that they could respond to, the access to training, all those different realities are a hindrance to the ability of our hinterland communities to participate. And I want to say that I was in fact looking to be able to list some of the communities, but you will remember that by 2019, we had more than 78 hinterland communities that we had put free internet access into. And we're talking about schools, we're talking about regional offices, we're talking about hospitals. You will recall when I went to Oriella and put internet in the community center, in the school, in the hospital, and also at the health center. Now, and for why I'm raising all of this is that access to the internet would have allowed these communities to at least participate and to be able to connect, to be able to access information. And the reports we're getting today is many of those areas where we purchased VSAT dishes, set up ICT hubs, and in the locations that I mentioned, computers with internet access, the VSAT dishes, all of that equipment in many places has not been maintained. So we have now deprived them, the hinterland communities, of not being able to compete even more, because instead of building on that infrastructure, they are now worse off than they were when it came to free internet connectivity. And what is sad is that everybody seems to have forgotten what took place and is not questioning why we're not expanding. It's not the AFC or APNU that loses out when that internet is not accessible to citizens, when it is not expanded, when it is not maintained. It is the citizens of the hinterland. So I wanted to add that. I know you had another question.
Yes, thank you. Just a second. So my other question, recently, Dr. Vincent Adams, a member of the AFC, he explained that there's a 10 billion barrel increase in the oil reserve, specifically in the Stabroek Block. And he believes that this validates the call for renegotiation of the 2016 contract with Exxon. Does the AFC see the need for a renegotiation given this new development?
Well, we have indicated, and I publicly have indicated that yes, indeed, because we understand the changed circumstances, but more than that, the PPP, when it was in opposition, had said that our agreements were so rotten that they will renegotiate. Did they fool all of us here, Davina? It would appear so, because they have an obligation, a bounden duty now to go and renegotiate. And with all that is happening, well, fine. We have indicated already, the AFC, that yes, indeed, we ought to renegotiate. And our chief spokesman, Dr. Vincent Adams, has indicated the rationale why, changed circumstances. So please, let us get on with it. But of course, Davina, you wouldn't get Mr. Numero Uno Barajagde wanting that at all. He fooled all of us.
Davina, I'd like to add to that the AFC has actually stated in the past that the renegotiation of the contract should be considered in the same spirit with which we work together opposition and government, we work together on issues that have to do with our border. And as you know, the border dispute. And this is where we've said quite a few times that we are willing to support the government in going to Exxon as Guyana, a unified Guyana, to look at how we renegotiate. So I just wanted to reiterate that point. I think I see V. Manik-chan having their hand up.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Vanu Manik-chan from the Guyana Times. Just a
Go ahead, we're hearing you.
response about AFC going to the elections. Does this mean that AFC is now reconsidering your earlier position of not renewing the accord with the APNU? I'm just seeking a clarification.
No, it doesn't mean that at all.
Oh, so you're still sticking with what you said in July about not possibly renewing the accord with the APNU?
Yes, we were asked a very specific question, and with regards to how we would go to local government, whether as an independent party or as part of a coalition, and we said that we're not in a position to answer, and that's where we stand.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Let me just double check. No, I don't. Any other questions? If not, I would like to say thank you to to the media for joining us this afternoon. We will send out the releases that we do have. And I do also want to thank our technical advisor who's working behind the scenes, our General Secretary, Sherrod Duncan. And it is Friday afternoon, so we wish you a safe and enjoyable weekend. And we will see you next week. Thank you very much.